Hello friends and welcome to the third video of SimpleVids about books. I'll be your host today, internationally acclaimed author Jay Tea Moriarty. Um, Today we are talking about what was that? Anyway, as I said, we were talking about my princess. Tonight we talk about the best stories in the world, Lord of the Rings, featuring me, Gollum. Now, the first book, it's not so good. It doesn't feature much of me. The second book, Two Towers. Oh, that's a tasty good book. Just skip the first half of it. And never mind that Samwise and Frodo. Stupid Fat Hobbitses. The third book is okay, but I don't like the chapter where I go for a swim in a very hot pool. Lava doesn't wash out very nicely, knowing her there. And don't even get me started on that Hobbit book. Pfft, disgusting. I hate it. I want to crash it and smash it and... Well, that was odd. What was that? Anyway, welcome to my book about Lord of the Rings, about my video about Lord of the Rings. I love these books, and no, I'll never apologize about that. I read these in about 2002, the olden days, and reread them in 2020. I wondered how well they would fare after so long, and see if they would still hold up to the idea that, Tolkien popularized fantasy for everybody, as well as how they'd weathered since the release of the movies. The movies are very much a modern repackaging of the stories. So, would the books be a real throwback through time, Turns out, yes, the books are still really good as a read. It is a deep dive, but it is very much worth it. And I could see all over again why Tolkien is the grandfather of fantasy. Not that he invented the genre completely on his own, but he helped to popularize it and certainly make it mainstream, like it never had been before. Now, this is Lord of the Rings is a deep topic. I feel like I could spread it out over about 3 videos, which makes sense because we're going to do Fellowship of the Rings, in the middle of the year, Two Towers, and at the end of the year, Return of the King. But for starters, Tolkien actually wrote The Hobbit. They said, can we have a sequel to that? And he came back with Lord of the Rings. And they went, oh, okay, well, that's good. He wrote 6 individual books, but they were clamped together in books of 2 to make the 3 books that we know today. I don't know if you can see them in the darkness. I really don't know who that creature at the start was. Oh well. But because each story is 2 books pushed into one, you'll see a very big difference between part 1 and part 2. And each book has its own small title. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Yes, the Fellowship of the Ring begins with our dear hobbits, Frodo and Sam, and Pippin and Merry to a smaller degree, being sort of forced to carry on the adventure that Bilbo started back in The Hobbit. Unbeknownst to them, but beknownst to the bad guy, the One Ring has been hiding out in Chillville, aka the Shire, for the last 50 sort of years, before Bilbo's going to pass it on to Frodo, and Frodo sort of is like, hey, I'm 33, that's time to start adventuring, and Bilbo's like, I'm 111. That is when evil begins to stir and the world is going to face a great challenge. Part 1 of the Fellowship is actually a mini adventure itself, for the hobbits sort of to deliver the ring and then be delivered of the ring themselves. They're thinking, cool, we deliver this to Elrond and Gandalf and whoever else is up there having a party, and then we're done. We're good. That's it. That's our whole adventure. That's all our end. That's sort of our bit, and we're done. Thanks. That's all hobbits do. They don't want the story. They don't want the adventure. They've heard about Bilbo, and he's an eccentric. You know, heroes. Heroes are other people. Never me. Never you. Which is quite a small portion of the movie. It still takes its time, but there is a fantastic amount that they just missed and didn't put in. If you've heard anything about the books versus the movies, you've probably heard about the character Tom Bombadil, who is famously very annoying and very polarizing, whether people like him or not. I didn't mind the character, but he's a very small portion at the start of the book, and he has one of the most interesting powers, which is he can put the ring on and it doesn't affect him. It doesn't turn invisible, it won't corrupt him. So the hobbits say, why can't we just give it to Tom Bombadil? What a great idea. But Gandalf later on explains he's got such a faraway mind that doesn't even think in the same way that everybody else does. He would forget the ring and sure enough leave it somewhere, and one day like a squirrel would pick it up, run off, give it to an orc, and that would be game over. There is a whole miniature story here where the 4 hobbits go about hiding from ring wraiths, visiting towns, sneaking in the backs of people's houses, avoiding danger, all on their way to Buckleberry Ferry, wherever they head for. And you see sort of there's moments where they get caught by brownies and other mystical creatures, and they're always saved by someone else, often Tom Bombadil, because it's in the wild and he can save them. But the book very deliberately is sort of pointing at them going, this is what your heroes are at the moment. You've got Frodo, who's the heir to Bilbo's fortune and I guess his reputation. And then you've got Samwise the gardener, who's just a gardener. So they get caught many, many times and saved many, many times. But it's kind of an introduction, sort of like a safe, scared way to have an adventure. Like, this is the first part of the first out of 3 books. We're not going to kill you yet, but we are going to show you there's dangerous things out there. So be careful, little hobbits. They have nothing, really, apart from their adventuring gear. They've got no skills. They're tiny little people who are delivering a horrible, mysterious ring, presumably to who will become the heroes, and they will leave the story entirely. But this is also the most flowery part of the book, which probably has the worst reputation for going into way too much detail about the trees here and the poems there and that flower over here and all this sort of stuff. Normally in writing, I don't like floweriness because it detracts from the main story as opposed to filling the world sufficiently, but Lord of the Rings got it perfect. The characters often stop and will swap stories and songs, and you'll see that the hobbits have a very different style of telling stories to, say, the elves or the dwarves. And I love it because it's the beginning of the beauty of Lord of the Rings. Not to say this is what's good about it, but rather beauty is a huge topic in, what is essentially a super giant fairy tale. And that's what Tolkien's doing. He's showing you how gorgeous the land is, just to begin with here, but throughout the whole, definitely the first book, you see so many places and they're so gorgeous and so well lit and just there's so much detail everywhere. Beauty is the reason. It becomes a question of like, why? Why is there so much detail about this in this book? Is he just wasting time or is it for something? And I'll pick up that point again later on. There's a few scenes missing, some are more spectacular than others, but there's one scene I would think they really should have put in. There's one moment where everybody's traveling and they see the elves far off in between all these trees and stuff, and it's all mysterious. And I'm pretty sure Aragorn's with them at this point, and they say, cool, who's that? It's elves. And he says, oh yeah, they're going off to the Grey Havens, whatever. That's all the movie really sort of does with the scene. In the books, they actually meet up with them again later, and they stay with them for the night. And they're like, this is great, we'll have real food, we'll have good company, you can sing us elven songs, we'll sing you hobbit songs. And it's a real nice sit down, have a nice sort of chat, have a rest period in the middle of your admittedly safe adventure before we get to the real story and meat and bones later. Sam is amazed by everything he sees. He's the most aware character in the whole thing. He wants to see oliphants. He's fascinated by everything. So he goes up to the elves and they're doing magic and stuff as they're just going about lighting the rooms or, making people comfortable and warm and all that. And he says like, cool, that's magic. How do you do it? Can you tell me? And the elves smile politely and nod, but then they sort of shrug and they're like, we don't know what you mean by the word magic. And so that's a fantastic shot, and it takes the two cultures, hobbits and elves, and puts them worlds apart, where to a hobbit, magic is mysterious and beautiful and, a curiosity. It's such a rare thing. But when you ask an elf about it, they sort of shrug and don't even know it's magic. To them, it's so common and everyday, they don't even think it's something special. And I loved the way that Tolkien looked at magic within the world, that there was such a difference, and also explained the two cultures so much and what their views of it were. The second half of Fellowship of the Rings is more what you see in the movie. Aragorn joins the party, Boromir joins the party, the elf and the dwarf give you their axe and their arrow. Plus there's Gandalf, the most unreliable, powerful wizard in writing history, I'm pretty sure. Like, I will meet you at the Prancing Pony. Yeah, right. There's honestly still so much that's in the books that's not in the movies. Like even Gollum stalking the group as they're going along. I'm pretty sure in the movies you see him stalking them through the mines of Moria. That's when Gandalf and Frodo have the first talk about, oh, there's something following us. And Gandalf's like, yes, I've been watching him for a couple of days. Don't you know that? But in the book, when they're traveling downriver, Gollum is actually riding a log, but he's such an expert at hiding, he's kind of hidden in the water behind the log. There's another moment when they're visiting the tree elves and where Galadriel lives, and they're in those wonderful trees that, are way up in the sky. Gollum actually follows them all that way, and he's climbing up a tree, the one that Sam and Frodo are in, but he is distracted at the last second when some of the guards come and sort of scare him off. So the whole time Frodo's been seeing this thing and worrying about it, And then Gandalf is just like, yeah, it's Gollum. I don't know. Let him follow us. I'm sure he's got something to do later on. Books 2 and 3, I'm sure. Yeah. But a lot of that isn't in Witches. Again, I could go on and on about it. Like I said, I would need another video to dive as deeply as I want to into this. And it really, really has been the best reread out of all the ones I've done so far. I didn't expect to fall in love with it harder than I did in high school. I do feel like I could read Lord of the Rings again and probably do one video on each and every single chapter. I'd be more than happy to do a series on Lord of the Rings if there's interest among my viewers, so let me know in the comments. Alright, so then by the book's end, we see the hobbits have improved in their adventuring skills. Learning how to fight, what kind of fires to cover up, that sort of thing. We all know what happens to Gandalf, but there is a greater deal of why, which I mentioned earlier and said I would come back to. So why care about the world? Well, why fight for it? And the answer for all that detail and stuff is to fight for all the beauty and wonder that we've seen. We've seen so much of the world. It's just absolutely gorgeous. If there's a great darkness coming, then we must first see the great beauty that there is and realize why we're fighting, what we're fighting for. So I guess people who read it and just think it's a lot of sloppy detail in the way, it is that if it doesn't do much for you. But taking this point of view, we're being shown by Tolkien how gorgeous and beautiful a fairy tale world is. That's why you're fighting. That's why, you've got your characters who will push against every hardship that comes up against them. It's very hard to go through such beauty leaf by leaf in a movie context, while the book can take you literally step by step by step through every sort of scene. Movies are a very straightforward visual medium, so they can actually just go, boom, here's Elrond and where he lives, where the book will tell you step by step how the trees are grown, how big they are, how rounded they are, how many elves live inside, how they live inside, what it's like to hang out for like 2 or 3 or 5 weeks. I think they actually spend 3 months at Elrond's place, but don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert, I'm just a super geeky fan right this second. But that's enough about content. What about the construction of the book? Well, it is written in a very different tongue to everything else I've ever read. I suspected that Lord of the Rings would be very sort of ye olde English, verily, come here thou, full width, full sooth. And it is, but that's part of the lyrical world that you get sort of pulled into. So you read different, you think different, and you see a different world entirely when you enter into this world. This isn't fantasy or a simple fairy tale. This is proper, deep, immersive stuff. Like, if you want escapism, this is absolutely it. And escapism is not a bad thing. Compared this kind of language to Pride and Prejudice, which I also read in 2020, and I thought it would be ye olde English, and it is. It was written back in the 1800s whenever. But it was still a very delightfully modern read, Pride and Prejudice. The way the characters spoke, the very simple sentence structure, the very engaging and relatable characters. That surprised me, that it was written so long ago, but still read pretty damn easy. If you wanted to change that to purely modern phrases, you could. And look at something like Bridget Jones's Diary, which loosely sort of steals the main storyline between Mr. Darcy and Mr. Wickham and all those naughty boys. Pride and Prejudice does have ye olde English without alienating the audience. And I'm not trying to say that Lord of the Rings does alienate the audience because of its language, but it does ask a lot of you, but it's so rewarding that you do it. Not that you have to, but if you're doing it, that's why. You're doing it because it will pull you all the way in and probably like close the book on your head. And you'll say thanks for that. But you know what? I'm going to stop there because there is plenty to say, but I've still got 2 more videos for the Two Towers and Return of the King, and they won't be until mid-year, June, July, and then December respectively. I loved visiting Middle-earth and going on a journey, a year-long journey somewhere else completely. This was when we were going through our first bout of COVID, so it wasn't the complete schmozzle that it was right now, but it was a very welcome journey somewhere else, sometime else, someplace else. Absolutely. Join me next week when I'll actually be going over reading lists put out by, official whoever's magazines, websites. I am currently reading through the Times Magazine 100 Best Novels from 1923 to 2005 list. But should you read a list? Why should you read a list? The list I'm reading is already 15 years old, 16 years old. That's so many novels to miss out on that they would obviously have to update the list, yeah? But, we'll be talking about that next time. do note that will be my first video not talking about a book per se. The way things are turning out, it looks as though each month I'll talk about the book I'm reading this year in 2022, the book I read back in 2020, and then I'll have sort of 2 videos for other stuff. Let me know what you'd be interested in, but being a reader-writer, I can talk about writing, things about writing, reading, how do you read, like there's paper books, digital books, ebooks, all that sort of stuff. Or then just I can answer personal questions like how do you read, why do you read, what for, and all that sort of stuff. So join me then too. And please like my video and subscribe and press the little red button so that you get told when the next video comes out. I genuinely appreciate the feedback and reaction I've already had. I've got 10 subscribers already, so hello to you gorgeous people. I didn't have any hope at the start. I thought I will put it up and whatever happens, happens. But I'm prepared to say when I get 50 subscribers, so that's this many, I'll do something special. And if I ever get to 100 subscribers, that's this many. I can't do that. I haven't got enough hands. I will do something else special. Who knows? I might do a signed book giveaway, maybe a live reading of something. Who knows? I'll have to write some more books in the meantime. Yeah, I'll do something special at 50 and 100 subscribers because I really appreciate the help. Also, ask me questions. Why are you a writer? When are you giving me back my book? Hey, are you paying for that? Where's the ring rates? Who's your favorite character? I understand that this outro doesn't work, that I'm reading in the dark, but whatever. Moriarty, what are you reading?
Oh, I almost forgot. The book is for sale. Let's see. There's the Full Life of a Robot one for 99 cents. What does that precious? No, I don't have any of those. I don't have any cents. And then there's Full Life of a Robot 2 called A Machine of Blood. You can get that one for pre-sale. Okay, yeah. For 99 cents throughout January. Ooh. A machine of blood. Yuck, we don't need machines. Give us a nice brace of cornies. Oh, so stupid. I hate this. Stupid. That's it.